School should start teaching children a second language as soon as they start school. At a young age, children can learn information much easier as their brain is developing, so they are more likely to remember stuff learned in that time period. I think from a very young age children or their parents should choose between a few simple languages, Spanish, French, or German, to learn through their schooling. When I was younger, I would learn multiple languages in a not very good system, so I would never actually know a good chunk of a language. I would just know little bits of multiple languages, which isn't good. I agree. We were always told it was because of budgetary reasons. The school couldn't afford to hire 3 more teachers to teach languages. Probably makes sense since the art teacher was also the music teacher and the gym teacher also taught social studies. In some states they do. I grew up in Vegas and they started teaching Spanish in elementary school. They did this in my school. I learned French since grade 1. By grade 12 I was pretty fluent. But then as soon as you graduate there is literally nobody, and no reason to speak it anymore. I don't consider myself fluent anymore, lol. Kind of a waste of time tbh. Wait, it doesn't. It does where I live, and you also learn a third language since you're like 12 or 13. I live in Wales, and where I am we learn Welsh in school but don't really speak it otherwise. That is, unless you go to Welsh school, which is just normal school except you have to speak and do everything in Welsh. My cousins went to Welsh school, however I did not. They are fluent and I know very little Welsh. I felt the lessons I had weren't very applicable to conversations. I remember our teacher telling us we were learning proper Welsh, not conversational Welsh. Whilst I got an A* in my Welsh GCSE, I still don't know much, because we talked more about the benefits of bilingualism in Welsh than actual Welsh that we could use. Here in South America I was taught English since my first year of school, and I'm grateful cause now I can waste all the time I want on Reddit. I know that the majority of Europe teaches a second language from their own. Back when I was a kid, here in Denmark we had English from 4th grade and then we could choose between German, French and, at some schools, Spanish or Italian. Mandatory. I think the rules have changed since I were a kid though. Last I heard, they learned English in 1st grade and then a third language in 5th grade. I know that it's the same for Norway and Sweden as well. It's just the US that's behind, because English is so universal, lol. What the fuck is up with monolinguals thinking this is unpopular? This would be awesome, but people need to realize that in order to do this, schools need adequate funding and better people at the top making decisions. I'm a teacher and our foreign language department has been cut down drastically in recent years because of budget cuts and other educational red tape. For example, if a student doesn't score well enough on a state math test, they are put into 2 math classes the next year at the expense of other more diverse classes. Oftentimes the class to go in that student's schedule is foreign language or a class in the arts. It sucks because funding is tied to testing, but testing doesn't always tell the whole story. So many kids suffer unjustly because of the emphasis on testing. They miss out on classes that they enjoy and they lose the opportunity to expand their passions. All because they haven't scored in the advanced category. Educational funding is all about percentages. If a district has 100% of kids passing a state test, they can no longer gain positive points in that rating category. Having 100% of kids do well on the test is amazing, but there is no room for growth, so if they score 100% the next year, there are no improvement points and schools often lose points. If you want more info on this, read up on yearly adequate progress. In theory, this should help schools, but in practice it is a nightmare. Incredible how we can always spot an American post. Wait, they don't do that? I thought they did. In where I live it's 3 languages since school. In most European country, you start a second language at 3. Only Americans, and maybe Chinese and Japanese, think they don't need to speak another language. It is not like 30% of Americans have Spanish as a mother language. They don't. In Canada they do. I'm from Ontario and I had 9 mandatory years of French. I went to a private school, so we started in kindergarten, but anything in public school is mandatory grades 3 to 9. They do. LOL, they do. Almost everything people say they should teach in school they teach, except like taxes. They should teach you your rights. They do. You were just 13 and didn't give a shit. Never hear of French immersion. Yes. I grew up with an au pair that taught me French. I could still kiss her for that, and although I may be rusty, it comes back easily and it made learning Spanish later in life so much easier. I would like to agree with you, but from my experience with language learning in school, it is very ineffective. There's a lot of factors required to make the experience enjoyable and retainable. My teacher was an absolute asswipe and was extremely rude to the entire class, and hence, no one liked going to her class. Also, the language has to be interesting and enjoyable to learn, as well as actually useful in the world. My school's choice was Indonesian. It was not interesting to learn, the grammar was too difficult to be worth learning and is not really useful on a global sense. Only one country speaks Indonesian. I think that should be either compulsory or at least very much encouraged. There should be a range of languages available depending on where you live. But in all honesty, the best few languages to learn would be English, Spanish, Russian, and Mandarin. They are widely applicable globally, as nearly anyone you could run into in the world would speak at least one of them or at least an offshoot of one. English will get you through most of the Western world, such as North America, Western Europe, and Oceania. Spanish through most of South America, and the Mediterranean. Russian for anywhere in Eastern Europe. And Mandarin for just China, but seeing as there are a large number of businesses in that region of Asia, being able to speak Mandarin would be a huge step for growth there. There's my rant on language learning. Sorry for spelling. Yeah, it's always sad. I have lots of friends from other countries. Pretty much all of them know English just about as well as I do, and their language, and oftentimes a bit of another. Usually kids I meet who are studying abroad are pretty wealthy, so they definitely use it. Obviously using English in America, and they will also say they lived in Italy for a year or France or Germany. Americans are required to take 2 years of a language in high school, and as pretty much anyone who's taken 2 years in high school knows, that is nowhere near fluent and quickly forgotten. If we taught our kids other languages, they'd be encouraged to go to other places, and it would be easier for other countries to have American tourists. There's a reason most European countries hate American tourists. Plus, me personally, it's dependent on your life, of course, would have benefited greatly from Spanish. I grew up in Oakland, CA, and not knowing Spanish there is a huge negative. And my current job, about half the women here are Spanish speaking, and it makes working with them a lot more difficult not knowing. I also foolishly took Latin in high school, thinking it would help me. I was gonna be a literature major. Instead, I didn't learn Latin very well, and what I did remember I have used never at all, besides to tell people that the subway literally means the underway, and that's why Subway is worse than other fast food places.